Hello, and welcome to the thewazchronicle. And in this chronicle, we should be looking at how Germany managed to recover from the crises of 1923. So it's the time for a quick recap. What do we know so far? We know the Spanish uprising happened in 1919, the Capuch in 1920, and we also know there was three crises in 1923. You had the Ruhr crisis, hyperinflation, and also the Munich Putsch. The question is, how does Germany manage to recover? And the answer lies at the feet of a guy named Friedrich Ebert. Ebert decides that he's going to appoint a new Chancellor, and in this case, it was a man named Gustav Stresemann. I've talked about him before. He becomes the new Chancellor and Foreign Secretary in August 1923, and he completely changes the fortune of Weimar Germany. So you might be asking yourself, how does he manage to do this? And the answer is really simple. He gets the power away from the extremist parties such as the KPD, who are the communists, and the NSDAP, who are the Nazis, and he gives all the power to the centre parties such as the SPD, the DDP, and the DVP. So let's focus on economic recovery. What does Stresemann do for the economy? And the answer is simple. He stops hyperinflation single-handedly. And how does he manage to do it? The answer lies in the Rentenmark. How does he manage to set it up? It all starts in November 1923. He sets up a new bank called the Rentenbank. When he sets up the Rentenbank, he issues a new currency called the Rentenmark. And the idea was very simple. He's going to supply notes, but they're going to be extremely limited. And obviously every single thing that they supply will be backed by gold. How was the currency received? The currency was received really well. People enjoyed it. They thought it was fantastic because it was backed by actual gold. People trusted this new currency. But then in August 1924, a newly independent national bank was set up. It was called the Reichmark, and it was given control of this new currency. It was renamed the Reichmark because the Rentenmark was just a temporary currency, and that again was backed by German gold reserves. You might be wondering to yourself, hold up, you got a new bank, that's all good, but what did you actually do? And the answer is, that new bank and the new currency meant that hyperinflation was over. People abroad and at home now trusted Germany and the German economy more, and this meant that recovery was on its way. Sadly, it wasn't all hugs and kisses. You see, there was a problem, and that was Germany still had to pay back reparations of 6.6 billion. And on top of that, people like Adolf Hitler, pictured here, absolutely hated the idea that they got a new currency. Why should they have to get a new currency? We don't have to pay anything back. That's his idea. So hyperinflation sorted, whoop-de-doo, but that's not quite true. See, even though hyperinflation sorted, there's still the problem of reparations. Now reparations are a massive issue, and they're resolved from the Dawes Plan of 1924. See, a guy named Charles G. Dawes is an American banker, and he's asked by the Allies to resolve the Germans' non-payment of reparations, and he decides that he's going to do that. In April 1924, Gustav Stresemann decides that the Dawes Plan is the best way forward, and he agrees to it. Now I know you're asking yourself, what in God's green earth was the Dawes Plan? The Dawes Plan was simple. In this plan, reparations, which was 6.6 billion, had been temporarily reduced to £50 million a year, and the US Bank agreed to give Germany loans to its industry. They loaned 25 billion between 1924 and 1930. As you may well have guessed, the sorting out of the hyperinflation by the Rentenmark and also the Dawes Plan sorting out reparations meant that there was a lot more confidence in Germany. For example, Gustav Stresemann was so confident he called off passive resistance. As a result, the French agreed to leave the Ruhr. Stresemann was seen as an absolute hero, and much of Germany improved. See, Germany was officially in economic recovery. For example, industrial output had increased to almost double between 1923 and 1928. You also had an increase in employment and trade, which meant that people could get more taxes. And I know you're going to guess what's going to come next. Obviously, we talked about all the positives, so you know there's going to be a negative. Even though Germany was strengthened politically, there was some massive problems. For example, Germany was now linked to USA. Its economy was dependent on those loans. Now, for example, Britain and France owed money to America because they took out loans from America to recover their economy and also repair the damage done. Now, Germany had to pay reparations. America took the loan money that they got back from Britain and gave it to the Germans. The Germans in turn gave to the British and the French, and they gave it back. It was kind of like a cycle, and it actually worked as long as the American economy stayed stable. Although majority of Germany was happy with Gustav Stresemann, there were some who felt that Stresemann was just papering over the cracks and the problems still remained. For example, the extremist parties were absolutely furious. For example, Hitler, pictured here, was thinking to himself, why are you paying reparations again? You shouldn't have to pay reparations. We didn't cause the war, and we didn't lose the war. Obviously, they did cause it, but that's one other point. So 5 years after the Dawes Plan, another plan comes along called the Young Plan, and the Young Plan completely changes everything. See, the Young Plan allows Germany more time to pay the reparations and also reduces the reparations. So what does it actually do? The first part of the Young Plan was quite simple. The banker named Owen Young and his committee of American people decided that it would be a good idea to reduce the reparation payments from 6.6 billion to 2 billion pounds. Also, they gave them 59 extra years to pay, and that was a massive amount. They all said to them was just take your time, don't worry about it, you get paid in time. Made Germany relax. However, there were some problems. One of the big drawbacks was the fact that the extremist parties such as Adolf Hitler and the Nazis decided that actually, what are you doing? If you're going to give this money and you're going to pay it back longer, it's just going to send the debt onto our kids, and that's never a good thing. See, the negatives don't just stop there. There's also the fact that they're still paying £50 million a year, and on top of that, it was now stretched out to 1988. See, it wasn't all doom and gloom though. You actually had some massive positives. For example, lower reparations meant lower tax. Lower tax meant that there's more public spending. On top of that, you had a boost in the German economy, which meant more jobs. As a result of that, there's a massive cycle. It was called the Virtuous cycle, and economy started to grow. It doesn't actually stop there though, it actually gets even better. See, the Young Plan meant that the French decided to leave the Rhineland. That was a demilitarized area, and that was a massive success for Germany. Also, everyone thought Germany was amazing. Moreover, the Young Plan was liked by a lot of people in Germany. For example, in 1929, there was a referendum that was held. 35 million people actually liked the Young Plan. That's 85% of the people who actually voted. Not only did Stresemann sort out the economic problems, he also dealt with the foreign problems. See, France hated them, but he does three things: the Locarno Pact, the League of Nations, and the Kellogg-briand Pact. So, what was the Locarno Pact? On the 1st of December 1925, Stresemann agrees to sign the Locarno Pact. The Locarno Pact was quite simple. It was between Germany, Britain, France, Italy, and Belgium. And the key factor of this was the fact that Germany were not forced into it, they agreed to it willingly. So what were the key features of the Locarno Pact, I might hear you ask? And the answer is simple. 1. Germany accepts its borders, those that are given in the Treaty of Versailles. On top of that, Germany and the Allies agreed the Rhineland would be permanently demilitarized, so no troops were allowed there. And finally, the 5 powers that are in charge agree that Germany can join the League of Nations. Not only did Locarno bring harmony to Europe, it also was a personal success for Stresemann. Why? Because Stresemann won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1926. This brought massive prestige. All of Germany was seen in high regard by the rest of the powers in Europe. But not only that, there were some people who still hated it, and that was Hitler, of course. They still thought that, why are you agreeing to the borders of Versailles? You just confirmed them. That's not a good thing. As I mentioned in an earlier chronicle, there was the League of Nations. The League of Nations was the policeman of the world. It was set up by America and Britain and France, and the idea was to keep Europe from war. But the problem was there was a certain country that didn't join, and that was America, and this made the League weak. However, the League did solve some problems, especially between smaller countries. When it came to big countries, that wasn't quite so, such as the Manchuria crisis and the Abyssinia crisis. But we'll go into that later, or in another chronicle. So just take into account that America not being in the League was a massive problem. But also Germany and Russia weren't in there. But this all changed in September 1926. On this day, Stresemann convinces the League of Nations to allow it to become a member. Not only does he allow it to become a member, but he also convinces them to let it join the League of Nations Committee, which meant that they had massive say in what happened and how they dealt with other countries, and this was a great success. However, there were some troubles, such as the fact that the actual League of Nations members set the Treaty of Versailles on Germany, and people like Hitler felt this was absolutely infuriating, and they disagreed with it completely. They wanted nothing to do with it. You must remember the League of Nations actually blamed Germany for the war, and people don't forget that easily. That hatred still remained. And this brings us on nicely to the third part of foreign policy, and that is the Kellogg-briand Pact. Remember, France and Germany hated each other's guts, so in August 1928, Germany and 1601 other countries decided to sign the Kellogg-briand Pact. So what exactly was the point of the Kellogg-briand Pact? The Kellogg-briand Pact was simple. The pact promised that no one would use war to solve its problems, and they actually discussed things. It was a massive success, and it was in part down to 2 people. One was a guy from America named Kellogg, another guy was the French guy named Briand, and both of these were their foreign ministers, and they actually managed to achieve something very important. See, America were not in the League of Nations, but they thought this was a really good way to keep peace. So what actually was in the Kellogg-briand Pact, and what did it actually do? 1. The Kellogg-briand Pact was completely different to the Treaty of Versailles. Now, think about it carefully. It wasn't dictated to them, they actually agreed to it themselves, a bit like the Locarno treaties. On top of that, you also had the fact that the Weimar Republic was now respected, they could trust them. And finally, it was the idea that now they were prestigious. People all around Europe knew that Germany were on the way to a better future. Look, all 3 pacts brought peace to Europe. Well, that's the idea, but the Treaty of Versailles rears its ugly head. People could not forget the Treaty of Versailles. They hated the idea of land, the land army money blame. They hated all of it, and they could not forget. So economically and in terms of foreign policy, Germany was amazing. But what does Stresemann do domestically? And the answer to that is, he's amazing. He actually manages to bring together all of the moderate parties, and by having strength in the centre, it means the extremist parties have no power. A good example of this is that in the 1924 May election, the moderate parties had 50% of the Reichstag. However, by 1928 they had 58%, so they had a majority. In 1925, Ebert dies. It's a bit bittersweet because on the one hand, Ebert's dead, he's the president. On the other hand, people hated his guts because he was a November criminal. So when he died and Hindenburg was appointed, everyone loved Hindenburg. Why? Because Hindenburg was a general and people thought Hindenburg would bring prosperity back to Germany. People liked the fact that he was talking to the middle classes and he said, I'm going to bring Germany stability. So up until now, Germany seems absolutely amazing, but the thing is, on October 3rd, 1929, something really bad happens. On that day, Gustav Stresemann, the man who saved Germany, has a heart attack and he dies, and this throws Germany into absolute chaos. While the death of Stresemann destroys German stability, it's actually the Wall Street crash of 24th October 1929 that destroys Germany completely. See, America's stock market completely collapses, and because Germany's economy is linked to America start asking for the loans back, and that's a massive problem. Not only that, the unemployment rate in Germany just skyrockets and everyone in Germany starts to panic. You might be thinking, so what? But this leads to extremists coming back, such as Hitler, who comes along and says, listen, I told you the Treaty of Versailles was wrong, I told you these guys were November criminals, you should have listened to me in the first place. So he decides to plot his way back into power. On top of that, you've also got other people, extremists such as the KPD, the communists, who still are hoping to get into power, and all this leads to the eventual rise of Adolf Hitler. And that's something I'll visit in another chronicle. Just understand, this event plays a massive part in his rise. So what's the best way to remember Stresemann's achievements? The answer to that is differs. Differs is each letter will be one thing. So for example, the Dawes plan would be D. The Dawes plan obviously helps Germany pay back reparations. Then you've got I for inflation being controlled. That pretty much is done by the Rentenmark and the Reichmark and then the Reichsbank, and it all being backed up by gold. Then you've got F for the French leaving the Ruhr, which meant that Germany could get its production back of coal and other resources. Then you got F for foreign affairs. We got the Locarno Pact in 1925, the League of Nations in 1926, and you've got the Kellogg-briand Pact of 1928. Then it moves on to economic growth. Taxes start rolling in, wages increase, and so on and so forth. You've got reforms such as the fact that Stresemann starts building houses. He builds, there's 1 million houses needed, and he starts putting a project in place to get housing sorted. He also brings the centre parties together so the extremist parties don't get a say, and that's called strength in the centre. So overall, Stresemann's achievements are massive, and he ushers in the golden age. Hey, you reached the end of this particular chronicle. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please do leave a like and a comment if you want me to improve on anything. And most importantly, if you do get a moment, please do subscribe. It helps the channel massively. And as always, thank you very much for your support, and I'll see you again next time.